So then, plenty to discuss this morning with our panel. We've got the Athletics' David Ornstein and Sky Sports News reporter Keith Downie. Guys, good morning to you both.
Morning, guys.
OK, let's start with Arsenal. Let's start with Arsenal. Sheffield United have told Arsenal that they want £32 million for the England goalkeeper Aaron Ramsdale. The question is, though, will they meet the valuation? Look, Keith, I'll start with you. If they pay what they need to pay, what do you think that would mean for the current number one, Bernd Leno? That's if he stays.
Yeah, Pete, you have to look at that and think that Bernd Leno's days would be numbered if Arsenal bring in a goalkeeper for £32 million. A lot of money in this market, given what we've been through the last year or so. We know that finances are tight for all clubs, really. So for Arsenal to go out and surprisingly spend that amount of money on a goalkeeper, you would have to think it would be to come in and be number one. I mean, Ramsdale had an unbelievable season last season. I think a lot of people forget that because Sheffield United were relegated. I watched them a number of times. He was phenomenal, kept them in matches that they should have been well behind in. And it's strange the way things turn out, isn't it? Ramsdale came in to replace Dean Henderson, who was needed back at Manchester United. Henderson's been in and out of the team at Manchester United. In comes Ramsdale, stakes his claim, does terrifically well, and is now, as you say, on the radar of a massive club like Arsenal. But for Bernd Leno, you would have to think it will be difficult for him to remain number one if Arsenal are going to splash out that huge sum on a goalkeeper.
And David, what's your take on it? Will they meet the valuation?
Well, the reports that have come in the last few days are quite interesting because actually my understanding behind the scenes is that it's actually gone a little bit quiet within negotiations. That could be for multiple factors. For instance, Arsenal had to cancel their pre-season tour to America. They've had other transfer priorities that they're working on at the same time, the contract renewal for Emile Smith-Rowe. But in terms of what's being mentioned, I don't know if, I don't know if 32 or whatever it would be is what Arsenal will go to. I think Sheffield United want around £30 million. There will be a little bit of reluctance from Arsenal's perspective to stretch that far. However, he is clearly their number one target. He's 23 years old. As Keith mentions there, if you look at his actual performances and speak to people in the game who know about goalkeepers, know him, not just at club level, but around the England camp as well, they speak incredibly highly of Ramsdale as both a player and as a person as well. And so I think it would be a welcome addition to Arsenal from a footballing and a character point of view. He's homegrown as well, of course. There aren't many goalkeepers at the top level of that age group at the moment coming through around Europe. You know, there's an alternative option Arsenal could go for example, such as Sam Johnston, but he's older at 28 years old, although the fee would be much lower. So it's a big decision to make. And just in terms of Keith's point on number one, Bernd Leno's under contract until 2023. Whether he wants to leave or not this summer, I'm not sure there's a market for him. Of course, Arsenal prioritised him last summer over Emiliano Martinez, who went to Aston Villa for £20 million, which is causing quite a lot of angst in the Arsenal fan base. And I think this would be to compete with Leno before a potential departure in 1 or 2 years' time. And then Ramsdale, if he comes in, would be the successor in Mikel Arteta's mind.
But David, I'll stay with you for this one because that's Ramsdale. Would be a great signing as a goalkeeper. But what's the latest on Ben White, who himself is a top player as well?
Yeah, nothing to worry about from Arsenal's perspective. I think that deal is going to go through. Originally, when the agreement was reached, which was widely reported, it was looking like a medical next week on sort of Monday, Tuesday time. I don't know how that's factored in around his holiday plans, his return, any quarantine issues and that sort of thing. But yeah, the medical, the finalising of all the terms around the transfer are expected to go through, and Ben White will be an Arsenal player next season. All being well from their perspective, Brighton will get a windfall of around £50 million. I think it's a situation in which all parties win because he was a transfer priority for Mikel Arteta, and it looks like it will get done on a long-term contract.
And David, what about any other names, anyone else on Arsenal's radar right now?
Well, it's going to be busy at Arsenal in the final, until the end of the transfer window. Darmesh spoke very well about it on Sky yesterday. They are still looking, as we've talked about, for a goalkeeper, a sort of number 10 player. We've talked many times about Martin Odegaard, others. There have been rumours around James Maddison. That's not one that I can see developing. I think that would be a huge stretch of Arsenal's finances. And I'm not sure it's realistic, especially with Smith-Rowe signing a new contract. There's reported interest on the Athletic with Tammy Abraham at Chelsea as a potential loan option. I don't know if that would need a departure to facilitate it. A new right back if Hector Bellerin is to leave. There was the interest in a more deep-lying midfielder in Ruben Neves that a lot of us reported. So I can't tell you anything with absolute certainty because I don't think anything is concrete at the moment. But as we draw towards that August 31st deadline, there's going to be a number of departures at Arsenal and still a couple more, at least 2 or 3 maybe incomings.
Keith, David just mentioned it there, the new contract for Emile Smith-Rowe, which Arsenal fans are delighted about, but Newcastle fans are looking at that as well, aren't they? Because they're desperate to sign Joe Willock from Arsenal after a great loan spell last season. Any chance that, you know, now that Emile Smith-Rowe has signed that new deal, that Willock might be on his way back to St James's Park? What are you hearing?
Yeah, Pete, I was going to say, just listening to David rhyme off all those names there, I think Joe Willock's probably the last thing on their mind, given the amount of players they're after and the amount of changes that Arsenal are hoping to make within their squad. But as far as Newcastle are concerned, they're desperate to get Joe Willock back. He was phenomenal towards the end of the season, scored in the last 7 matches of the season, 8 and 14. And remember, Pete, many of them came as a substitute off the bench for the last 10 minutes to try and salvage a point or grab a late winner. So Steve Bruce said at the weekend, his own words, that he's badgering away at Arsenal to try and get a deal done. It's my understanding that the Emile Smith-Rowe contract resolution at Arsenal gives this a better chance of being pushed through a little bit earlier. You'll remember that Willock arrived at Newcastle back in January on the very last day of the transfer window. Steve Bruce desperate to try and get him in before that. Newcastle, of course, have got a couple of games to play before they get to that stage, so you'll want him in around the squad and prepared before the season begins. But Smith-Rowe signing that long-term contract extension gives Arsenal, as I understand it, that security that they've got a player in that position, a young English player in that position, that may allow Willock to go out a little bit earlier. I believe Joe Willock to Newcastle will happen. It will not be on a permanent basis. I believe it will be a loan with a view to a permanent signing, because Newcastle's budget this summer would not afford them to buy Joe Willock on a permanent basis.